Okay, guys, we are continuing with the next point of the program. We are going to have an exciting panel about layer 2s and what's going to be next for L2s. So I'm happy to welcome at the stage again Alejandro Pedrosa from Scroll, Dominik Schmid from Polygon Maiden, Omar from Starknet Foundation, Ilya from Neil, and James Smith from the Ethereum Foundation. So a big round of applause.
Testing. Thanks for joining us today. I think we're at a very pivotal moment with layer 2s, so we're looking at the future of L2s. And I think if I can boil it down to three major things, I guess it's mass adoption, scalability, and decentralization. And I think what will L2s look like in 5 years? It's hotly debated, so I'd love to get your opinions on this. Maybe we quickly introduce ourselves, and then I'll fire up the first question. But as you can see, there's a few people in the audience, so feel free, we can also start asking questions from the audience pretty fast as well.
Nice. I'm Dominik. I'm working with Polygon Maiden, and we are doing client-side proofs, basically, so a bit more experimental in layer 2s.
Yeah, so hi, my name is Ilya. I'm a senior protocol researcher at Neil Foundation. We're working on sharded ZK rollup for Ethereum. So actually, I try to scale L2 solutions and bring decentralization of L2 in life.
Hello everyone, my name is Omar Espejel. I work for the Starknet Foundation. We're building the Cairo virtual machine, Starknet, and yes, trying to scale the blockchain ecosystem overall, now that we are also a little bit involved with Bitcoin. So nice to be here.
Yeah, hello again. I'm Alejandro. I work at Scroll as a senior protocol researcher, primarily focused on solutions for interops with other rollups and a roadmap to decentralization and to scaling the Scroll stack.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. So first of all, I'm going to kick it off with maybe getting into the weeds a bit too quickly, but let's go for it. MegaETH is a new L2, and they use a centralized block production with decentralized validation. How do you balance the need for decentralization with performance, and do you think fully decentralized block production is achievable in the next 5 years?
I think yes, but I think the only way to achieve this is with client-side proofs, obviously. But as long as the block producer needs to know everything, and as long as blockchains verify transactions by recomputation, it will not be possible. Also, MegaETH will run into a problem of state bloat at some point, even if they have a more performant state storage management. Yes, because the block producer always needs to know all the information to produce blocks. But if you have client-side proofs, then the block producers can know for most of the state just the commitment or the hash, and then it's way more efficient, and you can produce blocks. Like one producer could know half of the state, and the other producer knows the other half of the state, and so that way you can have a decentralized block production in a way more efficient manner. And this is, I think, the only way to mass adoption.
Yeah, I would say that sometimes we forget that decentralization is not always about making your system slower. Because actually when we talk about single block production per second, yes. But decentralization can be different, for example, sharding. Because when actually you have a lot of parallel shards that processing new blocks, actually decentralization is natural way to scale your system, because why you cannot achieve faster production than decentralization on a single blockchain system, but because you're limited in your block size, in your power, and in your network throughput, and this is where decentralization can actually be a better solution.
Well, I have a lot to add, but the MegaETH approach seems very interesting. It would be very interesting to hear their approach. We at the Starknet, we are focusing mainly to get the proposal of logs decentralization. I think it's working. Yeah. In around 2026. So yes, we believe that we're working towards that. We recently released staking in Starknet. So we're working on that to release it as soon as possible this year. So we are slowly working towards this decentralization of Starknet.
Yeah, so, I mean, ideally, we will have this decentralized block producer, but, I mean, I do actually want to ask about client-side proofs, because I don't know enough about them. So I'm wondering, you mentioned something like parallel block production. I'm wondering about how they deal with state conflicts, if they don't explicitly have shards. But yeah, I think like we can just look at, I mean, the problem in L2s is we're not the first that are going to have this problem in terms of a specialization of hardware, so we can just look at like at Ethereum and know what's going to happen. So the good news is we don't need to worry that much about it ourselves, because we can already kind of like see our future in L1, which is that whether we like it or not, that's probably going to happen unless perhaps some magical cryptographic solution comes about and saves the day. But yeah, so it's kind of not a desirable thing, but there are workarounds, even if we don't have magical cryptography, like the ones that are being used in L1.
Okay, great. What do you think about sequences? So sequences are kind of fancy validators in my mind, and there is a centralization and point of failure risk there. What do you think about shared sequences, and what would convince you to join a shared sequencer with another competitor?
Yeah, so for me, shared sequencing sounds great when there is demand for it, because there's more cost, and there's gonna be more cost in terms of fees and in terms of latencies for any of the individual rollups that join this shared sequencing period. So for me to be bullish on this internally at the Scroll, we need to figure out a solution that allows a Scroll to be shared, to join the shared sequencer on demand whenever there's enough demand in Scroll for this to be cost effective. Because otherwise, it's just a burden on users that are doing internal transactions.
You mean the way like Base will switch to core data and it can just switch as and when needed?
Yeah, it's a bit harder than that. Kind of like there needs to be like some prediction of when it's going to be based or not. And this is still not even seriously proposed or designed yet. But I don't see any reason why this shouldn't be possible. Maybe I should actually sit down and do the design since nobody has done it yet. But yeah, I think that's what for me it will be required for me to be bullish on this seriously internally at Scroll.
That's an interesting idea, actually.
For us, in the case of Starnet, we have been exploring the shared sequencing part. I think it's with Espresso, the company, regarding the layer 3, so app chains. Not specifically for Starnet layer 2, but mostly for app chains working on specific solutions for specific problems on top of Starnet. So there is where we're exploring the shared sequencing. It's something that I think we would be up to joining something like this. And I think we're also supporting the Espresso team in this.
Yeah, actually, I'm a big fan of shared sequencer idea and architecture in projects like Espresso systems. But in general, I would say I have very simple requirements to join shared sequencer. I need the security, liveness, decentralization guarantees, not less than I have on my solution, because every system, modular system, properties have to be determined based on the weakest point of the system. So if shared sequencer will be a bottleneck for my throughput, for my liveness, probably I will consider different options for which I can be responsible for. But if it's better than I do, why not? Because I like the idea of censorship resistant, more stable feedback. So in general, I like the idea, but I need some guarantees.
Yeah, very simple put, I would say, if shared sequencing increases the costs and the latency, then I would not add it product-wise, because I think the zero-knowledge rollups at the moment have a problem of not being cheap enough and not being fast enough. And it looks like that the market as it is wants very cheap and fast solutions. And so I think it adds additional security and censorship resistance, which is a high ideal. But at the beginning, at least, I would not add it or would not join it. But if it's getting to be as cheap or close to that, then
Where's the trade-off on latency versus censorship resistance?
like latency, you add latency because these shared sequences need to communicate somehow, right? And need to exchange data.
Yeah, but how do you make your mind up on which is better for the user?
Okay, so I hope I don't make my mind up for that. But this is like, I think our industry tends to do that and think, but like I would see how the market reacts. So if my fees, like I think this L2 wins, which is the cheapest and the fastest. Because I think like blockchains will be abstracted away. No one will know if they use Scroll or Starknet or Leiden at the end, hopefully. And then I think it's just like how cheap it is and how fast it is. And maybe how easy to use. And so like hopefully the market will tell me if they need a shared sequencer. And then I can add it.
I actually was talking to someone, they think that apps will almost be, the L2s could be a marketplace where you don't know which one you're using, you're just using the one that's the most efficient at that time. So it's interesting. What do you think will be the biggest technological breakthroughs over the next 5 years for L2s?
Client-side proving.
So I would say that actually the idea of aggregation layers or sharding, yeah, actually. But in general, like it depends, because I would say it depends on two ways, a pessimistic and optimistic way of development of the industry. In optimistic way, probably we shall never face a situation when Arbitrum has like $15 so gas for a single transaction. And that means that, okay, scalability shall be a point. But at the same time, in pessimistic way, yeah, like we shall develop a technology and actually boost our ZK optimizations, such as, for example, recursive. Okay, I have some radiation problem. So actually, like ZK recursive proofs, or for example, hardware acceleration of the proof that can actually improve the boost of use of ZK technology and ZK rules. You can try it, maybe.
Let's see. So from our side, I believe, and I just gave a talk on this, I am a little bit biased, but I also see the integration with Bitcoin something very interesting for a layer 2, such as having a layer 2 that can settle both in Bitcoin and Ethereum, which are the most decentralized blockchains out there, and likely the most secure ones. So this, I think, that could bring a lot of innovation in the DeFi space, and also help us bring, cheaper transactions in Bitcoin and faster transactions in Bitcoin to the masses. And this is something that we're very excited about this. Of course, there's a lot of things to happen. Well, there's one thing that needs to happen before that, OPCAT, but and that's not a trivial matter. But I think this excites me a lot. Like having this integration would be very nice to have the Stark verifier in Bitcoin script.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I do want to ask you though. So you mentioned settling on Bitcoin and Ethereum. Do you mean the Starknet stack allowing rollups that choose, or both at the same time? And if it's both at the same time, how do you deal with a possibility of a state conflict? So like the rollup is malicious and or is buggy, and it settles at different state on Ethereum than it does on Bitcoin.
That is a great question. I don't know right now, but if I'm not wrong, in the theoretical implementation that we're thinking of, you will be able to choose where to settle. Right. But I don't know if in the future we will be able to cross them. But in the end, this will allow us to indeed to have Bitcoin in Ethereum DeFi would be very, very interesting.
Yeah, no, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the other solution is Ethereum settling, not settling, but snapshotting state on Bitcoin. But that's a different discussion. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, that's a very good point that I hadn't thought of, but I completely agree. Yeah, as in the space of scaling Bitcoin directly, might explode very quickly soon. But then on top of that, also real-time settlement of CK proofs. And also very excited about fully homomorphic encryption becoming something useful very soon. And giving like real like anonymity and privacy to rollup users.
Sorry, just a question. How long do you think it will take for FHE to be like implementable, practical?
I want to say I have no idea. I'm not a cryptography expert, but from what I hear from my colleagues, you can already see kind of like what they say is that you can already see kind of so the same way that CK proofs have have become like so quickly practical, you kind of like see kind of like similar curve with FHE. So yeah, definitely in the 5 years, it's reasonable to expect some application, even if costly, of FHE.
I've got a question about revenue models. How do you think revenue models will change for L2s over the next 5 years?
That's a good question.
Client-side proofs?
Client-side proofs. The problem is, the client-side proofs makes it cheaper. So, so you won't pay fees because like execution and state storage is at the client on the user. So the network only verifies a ZK proof, which is super cheap.
Yep.
So that's why it's bad for the revenue model. But yeah, like the problem is like L2s have a very bad revenue model anyway. And like if you would decentralize it and use shared sequencing, then it's getting worse. So like the best revenue model is actually usage. So if you have many people using it, then you can do it over the fees.
So this is what Base is doing at the moment, essentially.
Yes, but like another option with client-side proving would be that you lease proof. Like for example, if you have a mobile phone and you cannot prove a more complex transaction on yourself, then you could send the proof out, or send the data out to someone to prove it, and this could be a wallet provider, and then there could be a fee attached to that as well. Yeah. But I don't see a good revenue model for L2s so far. Like the best revenue model is to have a centralized sequencer and only post to Ethereum in very infrequent ways, or like only when it's full. And then like this seems to be the best revenue model basically so far.
Yeah. In general, what I see that revenue model of L2 and rollups in particular very unpredictable, and it depends on a lot of parameters because like we have a price of fees, we have congestion, we have spikes in demand, and in general like on Ethereum fee system, like congestion, like response to congestion is quite slow. So in general it's quite to predict revenue model, but what I really think that for the users the like fees will definitely go down, especially if we will study like how to good scale your L2 and respond to congestion, and it makes better user experience, and it will bring like more stable revenue model for your rollup as a product, as a business. So and I will say this is what actually we target in NEAL, because we see this shift, and especially always some modern shifts like from MEV to more congestion fees, like on more specialized solution that settle on top of you and bring some strange property in your revenue model. So, and we just have to adapt. We have to adapt all the time, but understand that revenue model is quite volatile.
That's a great question. I don't have like a proper answer, but I would tend to agree that increasing the usage of the system, and once we got decentralized sequencers, I mean, for example, I know that Star Wars, the company, is thinking in handling a couple of those sequencers. So, but I don't know, to be honest, I am not, we don't know. And it will be very interesting to see, to find these revenue models.
StackX was a very good revenue model for StackX.
Yeah, but
millions of StackX.
no, StackX is still very making a lot of revenue for Star Wars, right? But I don't think it would be, maybe, yeah, that's another point, like having, for example, in the case of Star Wars, having app chains, I mean like layer 3s, specific for certain stuff, like moving to this application layer. But I know, as you mentioned, it's like adapting to the circumstances, and it's I think open question very interesting.
Yeah, same thing. I don't have an easy answer. It's also news that that's not my job, because yeah, it will have me scratching my head for a while. But I can tell you about kind of like an idealized answer, right? Which is, in my opinion, I don't like looking at what we build as something that's ours, the same as Ethereum doesn't belong to the Ethereum Foundation, and so the same revenue model that's being used for Filecoin Foundation, for the Ethereum Foundation, we're just building something. We embed either inflation or we embed some fee percentage that is given to the foundation to maintain the system that all of you guys are using, and we're just doing a good job at maintaining this so that you all can have a good service. That's what I will like to have.
Okay, that's super interesting. Not as conclusive views as I thought they would be. Next, I want to talk about the roll-up improvement process. For any of you that don't know, the roll-up improvement process is a way that roll-ups can suggest features to be built in, and it's a bit difficult right now because there is a lot of different parties with a lot of different motives, and they're protecting the core protocol of Ethereum as well. What's your view on the roll-up improvement process? How can we make it better, and what do you think it will look like in 5 years?
Yeah, in my opinion, we need to work better together at standardizing. This is really hard. This is also hard. It has also been really hard in the past with L1s. We have the good news, which is why base sequencing is something. We have the good news that we have the L1 that we can use for credible neutrality. So there is some claim that being able to actually have some sort of intermediary to actually figure out things better together. But that is something that we need to definitely improve way more. But that is a sensitive subject because we're also competing. It's the same problem happening at once, right? But yes, I think we definitely can improve in that subject, collaborating a bit more together and standardizing cross messaging or things like that.
I think it's really knowing when to compete and when to collaborate, and that's something that hasn't yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Quite happened.
Exactly.
I don't have too much to add in that sense.
Yeah, I would like to add to the point of collaboration. In general, I really believe that actually the blockchain industry is still so small and young to compete because we have an open market, like traditional market, to bring people, to bring money, to bring usage. So it's quite strange to compete at the same time. We solve similar problems because I saw some research that actually just repeat each other because we believe we are doing different things, but in general we are working on the same problem. So I believe it's quite natural to change. And yeah, I also like the idea of standardization because it can bring more stability and security manner, because when I use new rollup, it looks exciting, but I'm not sure how I can believe it. I would like to see more rollups to whom I can trust, to which standards I can believe, because most of the OPs, most of the optimistic rollups, they built on OP stack. And can we call it standardization? Probably, but these people change a lot on background of OP stack, and how can I be sure that this is something reliable and that will operate properly?
Yeah, I think in the future we need to be more open, and less standardized, to allow for more experimentation, like client-side proofs. I think there will be more rollups that experiment with a new state model, maybe with starts and non-CDSA friendly signatures and approving schemes. And so I think if we standardize it now, as it happens already, then we favor CK-EVM rollups or more Ethereum aligned, like technologically aligned rollups. And so I would love to see it more open. But this obviously is way more work, and then it will get chaotic. But yeah, so I don't have a definite answer for that, but yeah.
Okay. I'm going to ask one more question, then I'll ask you guys in the audience. Is the generalist L2 dead? If so, why? If not, why not?
I mean, a general purpose, like
A general purpose L2 that
Okay.
tries to do everything versus a niche specific L2.
I don't know. Like we were also thinking a lot about app chains in at Polygon, from like connecting to the AG layer, and we've seen there's like a market demand, at least from the people who build apps, but it was more financially driven because then they own their token and can make their token as like a fee or protocol token. I personally think that app chains, like it's not solved how you can have a good cross L2 or L3 communication in something that is faster than 1 minute or 2 minutes. And I think it will be really bad for the user if we have a lot of app chains. And so again, I think the market will tell us, or the users will tell us, so I cannot pay this application now because I have everything on this other app chain. And like, as it happens in Brussels recently, where like lots of people wanted to buy coffee, but you needed to have USDC on base, and then they were standing there and like trying to.
I gave them cash in the end.
Yeah. It was horrible. It was horrible. And this is just, it's not even an app chain, but it's just a layer 2. But imagine if you have like 100 app chains and you have like your money scattered around, and like it's cool for the people who build the app chain because they make more money then, like, which is a good reason, but it's like it's horrible for the user even now. So I don't really believe in the app chain thesis.
Okay, that's super interesting.
Yeah, I would say actually that in general, when we are talking about general purpose rollup, I would like to say that, oh yeah, this is future, but in practice, what I see, like when we are working on sharding and this application actually scales everything like chain, state, whatever, finally we come up with the idea that we should work with computations mostly. Like we cannot store tons of megabytes of data on sharded because it makes no sense. That means, like, I would say generalization of rollup from the like we can use for every reason makes no sense. But for example, if you tell like, okay, we have to specific chain for specific applications, I would say from my perspective it's a bit more niche stuff. Because like you can have a rollup that are quite cheap and quite fast and suitable for payments, for DeFi, for whatever, but not suitable for data availability layer or for big data submissions, whatever, to keep your big data. So, but in that sense, it makes sense to have more orientized rollups, but not like specific to some applications, only in a few cases. But yeah, I believe like
I don't think it's that the general blockchain, the general layer 2, but at the same time, I haven't thought about those points about the app chains, because I mean StarNet is also Starware is very focused on app chains. As you mentioned, StarKex is a huge point of revenue for us, and it's basically app chains, app specific. And they have some good points. For example, they are easy to manage. I mean, they have like a very simple implementation, so we can add, for example, censorship resistant mechanisms such as escape hatch, something very simple for those specific cases. For example, in the days of DYDX v3, we could have the forced withdrawal, the forced trade, and that's it. We got a layer 3, an app chain that has that complies with what it wants to do, cheap, fast, but also it provides censorship resistance at a certain point. So I think app chains are very interesting. You can also manage them in specific ways. They are very promising. I think also layer 2s are general layer 2s are relevant, but I mean it's an important point to think about what you mentioned.
I also agree that there is a market for general layer 2s, but working cycles are limited resources, and that's not the priority at the moment. And it could very well be that we keep having new things coming up as priorities before that. But I mean, there's definitely a market for them. Depends also, I mean, at the moment I'm also wondering, like I would like to see a proper, also maybe because my research background, I would like to see like a proper definition of general layer 2, but I'm thinking of some solutions that I would call general that I could see very well becoming a reality for Scroll, or I'm sure if there was somebody at CK saying what I'm thinking of, they will also agree. of what they see as the future of CK Sync, and I would call that a general layer 2 as well. So I think I don't think they're there. I think that we have priorities and we have a whole stack to build, and that's not the fastest go-to-market at the moment.
Okay, great. That's interesting. I want to ask some questions, but I can't actually see many of you because of the lights. But who's got a question? They'd like to.
Yeah, so I can see like adoption coming from two sides. So one natively, and on the other side, if like big players from traditional markets move to the blockchain space. And I'm not that bullish for like consulting blockchains, and I think if they move there, it's maybe that the vision of Ethereum comes through and it becomes this universal settlement there. But my question is, how far can we like push this? Like how many rollups are possible on Ethereum?
I think that is a great question, and that relates to the talk I gave before on how I think. I mean that it could be many things. So there's some people, people that are pushing for base sequencing, very bullish. In a future where there's real-time settlement, they will tell you that they are gonna have there's gonna be very specialized builders, and they're gonna basically be able to run locally very, very multiple state transitions and just prove that, distribute the proven and just recursively prove them. And so this is going to scale. This is basically the only vertical limit for scalability is at the VM, at the execution of this particular sequencer. I think that's a bit futuristic. It's definitely interesting to explore, but I think it makes a lot more sense to think of perhaps something that happens faster than that is to just envision, if there is a lot of demand for a lot of rollups, I think it's gonna more like happen that the cost is just gonna go high in Ethereum for rollups themselves, and they're gonna organize in what I call hubs, in like Elastic Chain or in Espresso, as layer 3s of a layer 2. And this can go on and on and on, at the cost of more dependencies in terms of trust assumptions.
But isn't it the case that you also hit a limit in for data availability? Like if you would add, I've heard or I've seen a calculation where you say even across all rollups, like Ethereum itself could not scale to more than 1,000 TPS if they would all be real rollups, like putting all the transaction data on chain.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they're not Validiums, and that would mean if I don't know, Scroll manages to do 50 TPS or so then we would have 20 rollups.
Yeah, so you mean for the first thing that I said or the second thing I said, the hierarchy?
For the first thing, yeah.
Yeah, so for the first thing, the thing is that you got it right, yeah. So you probably need to have some sort of hierarchy, at least in the data availability side.
But that would, but that would mean that even in the current stage, or even with dunk sharding, with proto dunk sharding, what we have, we would not even reach Visa as TPS.
No, maybe not in that model, but yeah, but as I said, I think that's a bit futuristic. I push more for a hierarchy that will allow you to always scale further.
So you would not put the data on Ethereum then at the end?
I think that what's not going to naturally happen is that the cost is just going to go high, and so it's just going to be natural for rollups to organize around layer 2s as layer 3s.
But also the layer 3 data needs to go to layer 1 eventually, right?
Well, when I say layer 3, I mean data availability on the layer 3, so on the layer 2, so Validium.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but one more thing about data availability is Ethereum as well, a settlement layer. I mean, the number of transactions from L2 you can prove on L1 is also limited, quite limited. But back to data availability, I mean, in general, this is what actually decentralized rollup can solve. I mean, in general, with proto-dunk sharding, your data is stored for a limited time. I mean, this is not full story of your DA. You still have archive nodes. If you will actually find a way to keep your rollup decentralized, you can provide quite good guarantees for your data quite liveness on your L2. It's more decentralized. Why we don't believe centralized rollups now? Because your data is on a single point. If you have enough decentralized L2, it can mitigate some of the risks and maybe reduce the need of L1 DA. Yeah, it will be Validiums, but with more security.
But then that would be slower even, right? If you have a decentralized rollup, and then they need to exchange all the because every operator needs to have the same data. And then, like, if there is not enough space on Ethereum itself for all the data, but you share it on the layer 2 on all the decentralized operators, then it will be even slower than these 1,000 EPS.
Actually not, because if you have decentralized rollup, you don't mandatorily need to send your data to L1. You can, for example, find a way to send only commitment from your rollups. In any way, you have some DA layer across decentralized validators, because block propagation is one of the most important protocol on any decentralized network. So, and in general, you can have enough speed for example, like it's done on sharded rollup. Your validator set on every shard is very limited. So block exchange between a single validator set is quite fast. So that's why you have lower risks to lose your data because it's shared across, let's say, 100 validators. At the same time, your data exchange way more faster than submission to L1, than proving, and the risks to lose your data are smaller.
Okay, but that means, to do this question, if we would want to go with ZK rollups, basically putting all the data on Ethereum, we won't get quite far. But if we use Validium, so we don't put all the data on Ethereum, then we can scale it more.
Yeah.
But this is, okay.
Yeah. But you still can have a proper, very good security properties, because again, you don't have risks of a centralized point to lose your data. That's why I insist that actually, if you have a decentralized rollup, all decentralized, you have lower risk of losing your data. And in general, what you have to prove only is state transition.
But it's not about only your data, it's about all the data, right? To prove, if I want to leave the rollup on layer 1, then I need to have all the data to prove to have my Merkle inclusion proof. So if I only have my data, then it wouldn't really help me. I would need to have all the data to have this layer 1 security somehow.
Actually, I was going to say this, you can actually have some level of user, translating the cost of L1 to the user for some users only. This is similar to how pre-confirmations are being proposed at the moment with top of the block. So if you have top of the block, if you pay to be on top of the next batch, you can actually verify the execution of that. And then the rest can be bottom of the block, and it's only proof of inclusion or state diff or whatever.
We might have time for one more question. Okay, thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.